In the sprawling, chaotic theater of galactic politics, one absolute truth had always dictated the script. Mass equals authority. As Chief Security Officer for the Galactic Trade Summit, I, Carvoth of the Draxian Imperium, was a living testament to this law. Standing 4 meters tall, encased in scales that laughed at steel, I was an apex predator from a world where survival meant crushing bone and rending metal. Respect wasn't requested. It was compelled by the sheer displacement of air when I entered a room. So, when the human delegation arrived at Station Epsilon, the sight elicited a reaction I rarely indulged in: genuine laughter. It rumbled through the arrival hall, sending a Quilvan attendant skittering into the shadows. The humans were absurdly diminutive, a collection of fragile, soft-skinned tourists wandering into a lion's den. Leading this parade of vulnerability was Lieutenant Ria Torres, a creature no taller than 1.7 meters, weighing perhaps 60 kilograms, soaking wet. She approached me with a smile that didn't reach her unsettling amber eyes. "Lieutenant Ria Torres, Earth Defense Coalition," she announced, craning her neck to meet my gaze. "Thank you for hosting us, Officer Carvoth." I stared at her extended hand. No claws, no armor, just unprotected flesh. "Lieutenant," I rumbled, declining the gesture, "you are very small." When I offered a protection detail for their own safety, citing their obvious physical limitations, she merely smiled wider. It was the kind of smile that hides secrets, reminiscent of a trap door waiting to be sprung. She politely declined, claiming they could handle whatever comes our way. Hubris, I would learn, is the most blinding of all lights. The diplomatic dinner in the Grand Pavilion was a study in contrasts. While I loomed near the Vordian ambassador, Torres sat at the fringe, dissecting her meal with surgical precision. I couldn't resist the urge to expose the charade. "Is that real meat, Lieutenant?" I called out, silencing the room. "Or a recreation to make you feel impressive?" She didn't flinch. "Real meat, officer. Genetically identical to Earth cattle. We domesticated them 10,000 years ago." I scoffed. "You convinced a species to let you eat them? How predatory." "We bred them to be docile," she countered, taking a sip of her drink. "Does engineering your food make us more predatory, or less?" I moved closer, letting the floor vibrate with my mass. I pressed her on Earth's true apex predators, the polar bear, the orca, beasts that dwarfed her. I felt vindicated as she admitted humans were physically inferior to the beasts of their own world. But then, the trap snapped shut. "We aren't the strongest or fastest," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "We're just the ones who hunted all the others to extinction. Size isn't everything, officer. Sometimes it's just a bigger target." The challenge was issued. 20 minutes later, Training Hall 7 became the stage for my humiliation. Spectators lined the observation glass. The Quilvan ambassador, Patik, floated nervously as referee. I offered her an out, a chance to yield to physical reality. She declined. The rules were simple: submission or incapacitation. I lunged, an explosive release of kinetic energy that should have ended the fight instantly. But hitting Torres was like trying to punch smoke. She wasn't where I struck. She was 3 meters to the left, analyzing me. I swung again. She ducked, weaving inside my guard to strike nerve clusters and joints. It didn't hurt, not yet, but it was annoying. I grew frustrated, tightening my attacks, finally catching her with a tail sweep that sent her sliding. She stood up, wincing, but grinning with a feral intensity that triggered alarm bells in my primitive brain. She began to dissect me, not with power, but with information. She slipped my grasp, struck my pressure points, and suddenly 4 meters of Draxian warrior crashed to the mat. She was on me instantly, locking my limbs, cutting off my air. As I thrashed, she lectured me on endurance hunting, how humans pursued prey until its heart gave out, how they used tools when strength failed. "Adaptability," she whispered, tightening the choke. "That is what makes an apex predator." Panic flooded my veins. I tapped the floor in submission. The aftermath was a silent revelation. As she helped me up, a purely symbolic gesture, she admitted my tail swipe had cracked 2 of her ribs. Yet she had kept fighting. "We are quite good at healing," she quipped. "Part of the persistence thing." We sat on the bench, the adrenaline fading into a cold clarity. She explained that while Draxians evolved for dominance, humans evolved for endurance and intelligence. They didn't overpower. They outlasted. They didn't just fight. They solved the opponent like a puzzle. I realized then that I had been hunting a creature that had already turned the tables before the opening bell. I rewrote my security report. The Council granted Earth full predator classification and trade rights, a victory won not by diplomacy, but by a chokehold in a training gym. 3 days later, as the delegations departed, I met Torres one last time. We shook hands, a fair trade of respect. I watched her walk away, realizing the galaxy had made the same mistake I had. Humans were small, soft, and fragile. But they were also relentless, adaptable, and terrifyingly intelligent. They were the kind of storm you don't see coming until you are already drowning in it.